Imagine waking up and before you've even finished brewing your very first cup of coffee, your brain has already just served up this chaotic buffet of anxieties.
No, the morning dread, it's the worst.
Right. It's like there's the ping of an unread email from your boss that you're just way too scared to open. Or, there's a replay of some incredibly awkward conversation you had like 3 years ago.
Always 3 years ago? Why is it always 3 years ago?
I have no idea. But it's that, plus this looming dread about your mortgage, the state of the world, and whether or not you actually remembered to take the trash out last night.
Which, spoiler alert, you probably didn't.
Exactly. I mean, it's exhausting. But here's the crazy part. There's an ancient Buddhist text that actually posits that in the time it takes you to take a single breath, just one breath, your mind can generate 84,000 afflictions.
Wait, 84,000?
Yeah.
In one breath?
84,000 distinct, pinging thoughts, pulling you totally out of the present moment. And the ultimate secret to shutting off that endless mental noise isn't, a magical mantra. It's not retreating to a cave in the Himalayas for 20 years.
Thank goodness, because I don't think I have the vacation days for that.
Same here. No, according to this tradition, the secret is actually hidden in the exact, precise way you wash your dishes.
Which, that sounds completely counterintuitive to anyone conditioned by modern productivity culture, right?
Totally counterintuitive.
We are taught that massive, complex internal problems require these massive, complex external solutions. Like, if your mind is a chaotic mess, you assume you need a convoluted system to fix it.
Right, an app or a 10-step program or a retreat.
Exactly. But the wisdom we are looking at today flips that entire paradigm completely upside down.
And that completely inverted paradigm is really the core of our deep dive today. We are continuing our ongoing series exploring the Diamond Sutra, which is one of the most revered and historically significant texts in Mahayana Buddhism. It really is a heavyweight.
It is. But we're doing this with a very specific mission for you, the listener. We aren't treating this ancient manuscript as some dusty relic sitting behind glass in a museum, just for academics to argue over.
Nobody wants that.
No. We are cracking it open as a highly practical, vibrant toolkit for navigating the actual psychological realities of modern life. Today, we are zeroing in on chapters 1 and 2, focusing on what the text calls the Great Question.
The Great Question. I love that phrasing.
It's so dramatic, right? But it really is the fundamental dilemma of the human condition. It's the unsettled, overactive mind. And to help us decode this, we're pulling from a seriously incredible stack of sources today.
We really are. We've got classical commentaries from historical giants like Master Sengzao and the modern Master Yunxin, alongside these really brilliant contemporary interpretations from Nanwai Chen.
And we're not just staying the classical Buddhist lane either, are we? Not at all. We're placing those classical perspectives right next to modern psychological frameworks. So we'll be looking at Jon Kabat-Zinn's foundational work on mindfulness-based stress reduction, the engaged Buddhism of Thich Nhat Hanh, and those amazing self-inquiry methods developed by Byron Katie.
Yes. The goal here is to really demonstrate that a text translated in the early 5th century is actually speaking directly to the nervous system of someone sitting in rush hour traffic in the 21st century.
It's surprisingly relevant. It really gets under your skin in the best way.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we're going to understand how this ancient text solves modern anxiety, we kind of have to look at how it begins, which is weird.
It is distinctly weird compared to its peers.
Right, because if you crack open other major Buddhist scriptures like, say, the Lotus Sutra, the Avatamsaka Sutra, you're immediately hit with this staggering level of cinematic spectacle.
Oh, absolutely. It's like reading a sci-fi epic.
Yes. You get the Buddha emitting beams of light from his forehead that illuminate millions of galaxies. You have lotus flowers just raining down from the heavens and millions of celestial beings gathering in the sky. It is cosmic, it's magical, and it's very like Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Lots of CGI budget in those sutras.
Tons of CGI. But the Diamond Sutra, it opens with a scene so shockingly normal. You might actually think you picked up the wrong book.
And that contrast is absolutely intentional. The opening of the Diamond Sutra basically strips away all the cosmic fireworks to make a profound philosophical point before a single word of doctrine is even spoken.
Okay, let me set the scene exactly as the text describes it for everyone listening. The Buddha is residing in the city of Sravasti in the Jada Grove with a really large gathering of monks. It's morning. He simply puts on his monk's robes.
Just getting dressed.
Right. He picks up his begging bowl. He walks into the city to beg for food from door to door, which, was just the standard practice of the time. He returns to the grove. He eats his meal. He puts away his robe and bowl. He washes his feet. He arranges his seat, and he sits down with his legs crossed.
And that's it.
That is literally it. That is the opening to one of the most rigorously debated philosophical texts in all of human history.
It's wild. And classical commentators like Nanwai Chin, particularly in his work Diamond Sutra, saying what they really emphasize, that this mundane opening is nothing short of revolutionary.
How so? Because it just sounds like a guy having lunch.
Well, he points out that the highest wisdom the Buddhist tradition calls prajna is not found in supernatural feats. It is not found in, shooting lasers from your forehead or escaping the world or transcending your daily obligations. It is found entirely within ordinary daily life.
The daily grind, basically.
Exactly. The Buddha isn't levitating above the dirt. He is walking in it, and then he is mindfully washing it off his feet.
I mean, I hear you, but I have a hard time buying that at face value, though.
Really? Why is that?
Well, if the Buddha is the awakened one, right, the ultimate teacher with thousands of followers literally hanging on his every single word, washing a bowl and sweeping a floor, feels like a massive waste of his intellectual capital.
Ah, the efficiency argument.
Yeah. Shouldn't he be out delegating those chores so he can spend more time teaching? I mean, to use a modern equivalent, it would be like finding out the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Someone managing billions of dollars and thousands of employees spends 45 minutes every single day meticulously washing their own coffee mug and sweeping the break room floor.
You'd think they were crazy.
You'd look at them and think, you are heavily mismanaging your time. Pay someone else to do that. We have a shareholder meeting.
Right. But that reaction, that exact discomfort you're feeling, is why the opening is so vital. It challenges our entire hierarchy of importance.
What do you mean by hierarchy of importance?
We constantly categorize our lives into important things and chores, right? The CEO thinks the boardroom meeting is the important thing, and washing the mug is just this annoying obstacle in the way of the next meeting.
Yeah, the mug is just the thing keeping me from the real work.
Exactly. But what the Buddha is demonstrating here is a state of non-duality. There's no separation between the mundane and the sacred. Nanwai Chin notes that the Buddha's everyday routine is the ultimate physical manifestation of prajna. Enlightenment is not an escape from reality. It is a total frictionless immersion in it.
A fictionless immersion.
Wow.
Which, that maps perfectly onto the writings of Thich Nhat Hanh that we have in our source stack today, specifically from the Miracle of Mindfulness.
Oh, his concept of dishwashing. Yes.
Right. He talks extensively about the concept of washing the dishes to wash the dishes. Because if I'm standing at the sink, usually my mind is literally anywhere but the sink. I'm washing the dishes so I can get them out of the way.
So you can go do the important thing.
Exactly. So I can go sit on the couch, so I can watch a show, so I can finally relax. My body is at the sink, but my brain is living 15 minutes in the future.
And because your brain is living in the future, you are essentially treating the present moment as a nuisance. You are rejecting the reality of your own life in that exact second.
That's a really confronting way to put it. Rejecting the reality of my own life.
It's true, though. Thich Nhat Hanh argues that if you are incapable of washing the dishes mindfully, like really feeling the temperature of the water, noticing the texture of the soap, being completely aware of the physical action, you will be utterly incapable of sitting in meditation mindfully.
Because the habit of rushing is already there.
Precisely. Because if you rush through the dishes to get to your tea, when you finally sit down with your tea, your mind will just rush toward the next thing. You won't actually taste the tea.
It's just a relentless dopamine loop. We are constantly mortgaging the present moment for some imagined future payoff that, frankly, never actually satisfies us when we get there anyway.
Never. The goalpost always moves.
So, by walking into town, eating, and washing his feet with this absolute unbothered presence, the Buddha is physically embodying the solution to that loop. His actions are the teaching. He is walking the walk, literally.
He is, and he is doing it with such profound peace and groundedness that it actually shocks his students. I mean, they've been watching him do this every day, but suddenly one of them truly sees it.
The mundane becomes miraculous.
Exactly. The sheer presence of the Buddha's mundane routine acts as a catalyst. It breaks through the conceptual noise of the monks around him.
But, okay, if the Buddha had already demonstrated the perfect answer just by eating his lunch and washing his feet, why did anyone need to ask him a question at all? Like, what was missing that forced his top student to suddenly stand up and interrupt the silence?
That is the million-dollar question.
And that brings us to Chapter 2, and what the text calls the Great Question.
Yeah.
Out of this massive assembly, we're talking over 1,000 monks. One specific disciple named Subhuti stands up.
And the fact that it is Subhuti is a critical piece of context for you, the listener. In the Buddhist tradition, Subhuti is not just an average monk in the back row. He is renowned as the disciple foremost in understanding emptiness.
So he's the smart kid in class.
He is the intellectual heavyweight of the group when it comes to the philosophy of ultimate reality. So when he stands up, the rest of the assembly knows that a profound dialogue is about to happen. They're all leaning in.
So Subhuti bares his right shoulder, he kneels on his right knee, puts his hands together in a gesture of respect, and asks a question on behalf of anyone seeking a Nuttara Samdhyaksambuddhi.
Which is quite the mouthful.
It's a massive Sanskrit term.
Yeah.
But it essentially translates to supreme, perfect, unexcelled awakening, the highest possible state of enlightenment. And to achieve this state, Subhuti asks two incredibly specific questions. First, how should one's mind abide? And second, how should one subdue their mind?
And the language here is really fascinating. Looking at the different historical translations really opens up the psychology behind what he's asking. Let's look at the second question. How should one subdue their mind?
Right.
Edward Kanze, who is a renowned modern translator of Sanskrit Buddhist texts, he translates this as controlling their thoughts.
Which feels very Western, very clinical.
Yes. Now, the Chinese translator, Xuanzang, used the term shifu, which has a gentler connotation of gathering in and managing, almost like herding sheep. But Kumarajiva, the 5th century translator, whose Chinese version became the most beloved and culturally dominant, he chose the characters Jiangfu.
Now, Jiangfu sounds a lot more intense than just managing, doesn't it?
It really does. It means to subdue, to conquer, to tame. It is the language you would use for breaking a wild stallion or subduing a rebellion.
Oh, wow. A rebellion.
Yeah. By choosing Jiangfu, Kumarajiva is acknowledging the visceral reality of human consciousness. The mind is wild. It is rebellious. It does not want to sit still. Subhuti is basically asking how we tame this restless, afflicted thought process that constantly drags us into suffering.
And the first question, how should the mind abide, is really the other half of that equation, right? Like, once we tame this wild stallion of a mind, where do we park it?
Exactly.
If you're listening to this while sitting in traffic right now, your mind is probably already at the office, stressing about an email you haven't even read yet. Or maybe you're replaying an argument you had with your partner this morning.
The shower arguments, we all have them.
We all have them. Your physical body is strapped into a car seat, but your mind is abiding in a state of conflict that isn't actually happening in the present moment.
That is the perfect modern framing. Subhuti's ancient question is the exact same question a professional asks after a highly toxic strategy meeting. You get home, you sit on your couch, and your brain is just spinning.
What did my boss mean by that passive-aggressive comment? Did I sound incompetent when I answered that question? I had so much to fix tomorrow.
Your mind is just galloping away with these narratives.
You're begging for an off switch. You're asking, how do I turn my brain off? How do I stop fixating on that one interaction that is Jiangfu? How do I subdue this? And then, once I stop fixating, where is my mind supposed to rest so I actually feel some semblance of peace? That is the question of abiding. Where do I anchor my awareness?
Classical commentators point out that these aren't really two separate questions. They are two sides of the exact same coin. An unsettled mind is a wandering mind. It needs to be subdued. A subdued mind naturally finds its proper abiding place.
With a package deal.
Exactly. The root of our suffering is that our minds are constantly abiding in the wrong places. We abide in anger. We abide in anxiety about a future that hasn't happened. We abide in regret about a past that no longer exists.
We are constantly living in the what-ifs and the if-onlys. It is an exhausting way to exist. So Subhuti lays this massive, heavy, universal question at the Buddha's feet. He is basically asking for the ultimate psychological manual for human suffering.
And the Buddha's immediate response is so unexpected.
It really is. If I ask a therapist how to stop my panic attacks, I expect them to immediately give me a breathing exercise or like a cognitive framework. But the Buddha doesn't hand over a 10-step meditation manual. His first reaction is to compliment Subhuti. He smiles and says, "Excellent, excellent, Subhuti."
Which is a profound pedagogical choice. Why praise someone for admitting that their mind is a chaotic mess?
Because most people won't admit it.
Because in this framework, realizing that your mind is chaotic and genuinely seeking the method to tame it is the very first and most crucial step toward awakening. Most people go through their entire lives completely identified with their racing thoughts.
I am my anxiety. I am my anger.
Exactly. They never even realize they are trapped in a storm of their own making. Subhuti recognizes this storm. He has separated his awareness from the chaos just enough to point at it and ask for an umbrella. That self-awareness is worthy of massive praise.
And the Buddha is thrilled to provide that umbrella. He begins his formal response with a phrase that contains the absolute core of his teaching. He praises Subhuti by stating, "The Tathagata well protects and cares for the bodhisattvas."
And just for clarity, Tathagata is just another title for the Buddha. It means the one who has thus come and gone.
Right. But the phrase I want to pull out of this, the absolute golden nugget of this entire deep dive, is found in Kumarajiva's Chinese translation. It's the 3 characters, Shan Hu Nian.
Shan Hu Nian. It is a masterpiece of translation. If we break it down, Shan means good, virtuous, or skillful. Hu means to protect, to guard, or to care for. And Nian means thought, mind, or memory.
So put together.
Put together, it means skillfully guarding one's thoughts or taking good care of one's mind.
Nanwai Chin insists in his commentary that this 3-character phrase is the fundamental core of all spiritual cultivation. He points out that whether you are practicing Buddhism, Taoism, or Confucianism, if you strip away all the rituals and the dogma, the essence of the work comes down to this single directive: taking good care of your thoughts.
It's incredibly grounding.
It's not about trying to manifest $1 million. It's not about acquiring some mystical superpower to read minds. It is simply about observing the mind constantly.
And this is exactly where the classical text brilliantly intersects with the cutting edge of modern psychology and neuroscience. Let's look at Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn.
The founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR.
Right. In the late 1970s, Kabat-Zinn essentially took these exact Buddhist principles, stripped them of their religious vocabulary, and brought them into a clinical setting to treat chronic pain and stress. In his book, Wherever You Go, There You Are, he defines mindfulness in a very specific, operational way.
What's his definition?
He says it is paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally.
Non-judgmentally is the key word there. Kabat-Zinn also refers to it as an affectionate attention. And I think that phrase completely rewires how most of us approach our own brains.
Oh, without a doubt.
Usually when we realize our mind has wandered off into anxiety, our internal monologue is incredibly harsh. We think, ugh, stop worrying, you're so neurotic, focus. It's a cold, clinical, almost punitive relationship with our own thoughts.
Exactly. We try to police our thoughts with a nightstick. But Kabat-Zinn emphasizes that the root of the word for mind in many Asian languages, including the Chinese character Cixin, is the same as the word for heart. So mindfulness is also heartfulness.
I love that. Heartfulness.
Shan Hu Nian is exactly this gentle, non-harming observation of your cognitive processes. It is rooted in ahimsa, the Sanskrit concept of non-harming. When you observe those 84,000 afflictions arising, you don't beat yourself up for having them. You skillfully, affectionately guard your awareness.
The neurobiology of this is fascinating too. If you use harshness to suppress a thought, you are actually triggering the amygdala. You are flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline to fight the anxiety.
Which just makes the brain associate that thought pattern with even more danger. You're digging the rut deeper.
Exactly. I like to compare the human mind to a hyperactive puppy. Let's say you bring a new puppy home. It has absolutely no impulse control. It wants to chew the furniture, pee on the rug, and sprint in circles.
A very apt description of the human ego, honestly.
Right. Now, if you want to train that puppy, how do you do it? Do you scream at it every time it wanders off? Do you lock it in a dark box? Do you hit it?
If you do, you don't get a well-trained dog.
Yeah.
You get a neurotic, terrified, aggressive dog.
And that is exactly what we do to our minds when we try to violently suppress our anxieties. Instead, what does a good dog trainer do? When the puppy wanders off to chew a shoe, the trainer gently, calmly picks it up and puts it back on its training pad. 10 seconds later, the puppy wanders off again.
Because of course it does.
Because it's a puppy. The trainer doesn't yell. They just gently pick it up and put it back. You do this 10,000 times with infinite patience and affection. You are building a new neural pathway. You continuously guide it back to where it needs to be. That is the essence of Shan Hu Nian.
That analogy beautifully captures the mechanics of neuroplasticity and mindfulness, but It also highlights the central tension in Subhuti's question.
Which is?
If we are just gently guiding the mind, if we are just affectionately observing it like a puppy, how does that actually subdue it? How does that conquer the truly intense, deep-seated worldly attachments and terrors that grip us?
Yeah, that's the kicker.
Because let's be honest, sometimes a panic attack doesn't feel like a wandering puppy. It feels like a raging 1,000-pound bull destroying the china shop of your nervous system.
Yes. If I'm having a panic attack, affectionate attention sounds like bringing a feather duster to a knife fight. How does the Buddha bridge that gap? How does he instruct Subhuti to actually subdue the mind?
The Buddha's answer to this how is a massive paradox. When asked how to subdue the mind, the Buddha essentially replies, just like this.
Wait, just like this? That's the answer.
Yes. In the Chinese translation, it's Rushi Jiangfu Qixing. Thus should you subdue your mind. In other words, in the very act of being completely present without attachment, the mind is already subdued. The instruction is fundamentally not to actively fight the mind.
I can hear the collective groan of our listeners right now. Don't fight it, just be it. It sounds like a riddle wrapped in an enigma.
It does sound a bit Yoda-ish.
It really does. If I have severe workplace anxiety and my heart is pounding out of my chest because I have to give a massive presentation tomorrow, and you tell me just don't try to fix it, just abide in the present, I'm going to throw my phone out the window.
I wouldn't blame you.
That sounds like philosophical poetry that offers zero tactical help when my nervous system is literally on fire. What do I actually do?
That is the exact frustration that the Zen tradition grappled with for centuries. If you actively try to forcefully crush your agitation, what are you mechanically doing? You are using agitation to fight agitation.
You're fighting fire with fire.
You are creating a second layer of stress. You are now stressed about the fact that you are stressed. There is a famous quote from a lay Zen practitioner named Zhang Zhu from the Tang Dynasty, which Nan Huaichin highlights in his commentary. Zhang Zhu wrote, "Cutting off afflictions only adds another illness."
Adding another illness.
Right. If you make eliminating my anxiety your new, massive, rigid goal, you have just created a new attachment. You've created a new benchmark to fail at.
You're locking the puppy in the box. You are using violence against your own internal state. But the question remains, if I don't fight the anxiety about my presentation tomorrow and I don't just ignore it, what is the third option? How do I subdue it without fighting it?
The third option is inquiry. And we can look at a brilliant modern application of this ancient concept through the work of Byron Katie.
I love Byron Katie's work.
It's so effective. She developed a process of psychological self-inquiry simply called the work, and it perfectly mirrors the Diamond Sutra's method of subduing the mind through deconstruction. Let's take your exact scenario. You have a presentation tomorrow. Your heart is pounding. Your brain is serving up the thought, if I fail this presentation, my boss will realize I'm incompetent and my career is over.
That is a very real, very terrifying thought for a lot of people. The physical symptoms are intense. Sweaty palms, insomnia, shallow breathing.
So the instinct is to fight it, to look in the mirror and shout affirmations. No, I'm great. I'm a winner. I'm going to crush it. Or the instinct is to distract yourself by doom scrolling on your phone for 3 hours.
Guilty as charged.
We all do it. But Katie's method says, don't fight the thought and don't flee from it. Instead, write it down on a piece of paper. If I fail this presentation, my career is over. By writing it down, you are already practicing Shan Hu Nian. You're observing the thought, extracting it from the swirling chaos of your amygdala, and placing it objectively right in front of you.
You're looking at the puppy instead of letting it run wild behind you.
Precisely. Once it's on paper, Katie guides you to ask 4 simple but devastating questions. Question 1. Is it true? Now, your panicked brain might immediately scream, yes, it's true.
Of course it's true. I'm terrified.
Exactly. So you move to question 2. Can I absolutely know that it's true? Can you, with 100% metaphysical certainty, know the future? Can you know exactly what your boss will think? Can you know that a failed presentation won't actually lead to a better opportunity elsewhere?
When you pause and really look at it, the answer to question 2 is almost always no. You cannot absolutely know the future. You are hallucinating a worst-case scenario.
Exactly. Then comes question 3. How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought?
Well, let's see. I sweat. I lose sleep. I snap at my spouse. I feel a tightening in my chest. I become a worse employee because I'm totally paralyzed by fear.
Right. You trace the biological and behavioral consequences of believing the narrative. And finally, question 4. Who would you be without the thought? Imagine you are walking into that presentation room tomorrow, and by some magic, you are simply incapable of having the thought, my career is over. Who are you in that room?
I'm focused. I'm breathing normally. I'm actually paying attention to the audience instead of my own internal panic. I'm in a flow state. I might actually give a great presentation because I'm not carrying 1,000 pounds of existential dread.
And then Katie asks you to turn the thought around. Find the opposite. If I fail this presentation, my career is not over. Or even, my boss's opinion of me doesn't define my underlying competence. You look for evidence of how those turnarounds might be as true or truer than your original terrifying thought.
Okay, I really see the connection now. What we just did there wasn't suppressing the thought. We didn't fight the anxiety. We put it under a microscope and systematically dismantled it. We realized that the thought was just a story. It was a narrative spun up by the brain based on past conditioning and future projection.
In Buddhist terminology, you just realize the emptiness of the thought. And this is a crucial concept we really need to explain clearly, because when people hear the word emptiness, or sunyata in Sanskrit, they often mistake it for nihilism.
They think it means nothing matters, life is a void, just stare at a blank wall.
Right. But that is a complete misunderstanding.
Emptiness doesn't mean a void. It doesn't mean non-existence.
No. Emptiness means dependent origination. It means that nothing exists independently, permanently, or with its own inherent self-nature. Think of a rainbow. A rainbow is beautiful, it's visible, you can point to it. But does a rainbow have independent, permanent existence?
Definitely not.
No. It only exists because of a highly specific combination of sunlight, water droplets in the air, and the specific angle of the observer looking at it. If the sun goes behind a cloud, the rainbow vanishes. If you try to run up and grab the rainbow, put it in a box and keep it, you just get wet hands. The rainbow is empty of a solid, independent self.
But the rainbow still appears. It's just that its nature is fluid and dependent.
Exactly. And the Diamond Sutra is arguing that your thoughts, your anxieties, your ego, and your very identity are exactly like that rainbow. Your thought, my career is over, is a rainbow. It only exists because of a combination of your current physical exhaustion, your cultural conditioning about capitalism, and, I don't know, a stray comment your boss made yesterday.
Right. If you change any of those conditions, the thought vanishes.
When Byron Katie asks, can you absolutely know it's true? She's pointing out that you are trying to grab a rainbow. When you truly see that the thought is empty, that it lacks a solid, permanent core, the thought subdues itself. You don't subdue the mind. By realizing the emptiness of the thoughts, the mind naturally settles.
That is incredibly profound. By realizing the anxiety is just a temporary weather pattern of conditions, you stop fighting the weather. And this realization of emptiness, this dismantling of our rigid internal narratives, leads us to a fascinating structural quirk of the Diamond Sutra itself. It's something that scholars have debated for centuries.
It's one of the most brilliant architectural features of any philosophical text.
If you read the Diamond Sutra straight through, you might think the editor fell asleep at the wheel. Because in Chapter 2, as we've been discussing, Subhuti asks his brilliant questions. How should the mind abide, and how should we subdue it?
Right.
The Buddha answers, and they proceed to have this deep, reality-shattering philosophical dialogue about emptiness for 15 chapters. And then, in Chapter 17, Subhuti stands up, addresses the Buddha, and asks the exact same question again, word for word. How should one abide? How should one subdue the mind?
It seems bizarre.
Did he forget the last 2 hours of conversation? Was he not taking notes? What is going on there?
To the untrained eye, it looks like a glaring repetition. But classical masters, particularly Master Sengzao and the modern scholar Yunshin, mapped out the structure of the sutra and revealed that this is actually a profound deepening of the teaching. Subhuti hasn't forgotten anything. The context of the entire assembly has shifted.
So why ask it again? What changed between Chapter 2 and Chapter 17?
Master Yunshin explains this using the incredibly helpful framework of rough dust versus fine dust. Think of cleaning a filthy, abandoned house. The first time Subhuti asks the question in Chapter 2, he's asking on behalf of beginners. He is asking how to deal with rough dust.
Rough dust, okay.
Rough dust represents our coarse, everyday, worldly attachments. The biggest piece of rough dust is the attachment to the ego, the I. The belief that I am my body, I am my career, I am my anger. The Buddhist teachings in chapters 3 through 16 are entirely focused on realizing the emptiness of the self. He is giving them the broom to sweep up the big piles of dirt.
He's helping them deconstruct the obvious illusions, the massive anxieties, the blatant selfishness.
Exactly. But once you've swept the floor and removed the rough dust, the house isn't perfectly clean. There is still fine dust hidden in the corners, floating invisibly in the air. By chapter 17, the monks in the assembly have understood the emptiness of the self. They've swept the rough dust. But now they face a new, far more subtle trap.
What's the trap?
They have become attached to the methods of enlightenment. They have become attached to the idea of emptiness. They're clinging to the Dharma, the teachings themselves. This is the fine dust. So Subhuti asks the question again on behalf of advanced practitioners. Okay, we've let go of our egos, but how do we let go of our attachment to the process of letting go?
Wow. This reminds me of a trap I fall into, and I think a lot of people in the wellness or spiritual space fall into. I'll read a great philosophy text, or I'll go on a meditation retreat, and I'll feel incredibly peaceful.
Right, you get that post-retreat glow.
Yes. But then I come back to the real world, and I find myself walking around judging everyone else who hasn't meditated. I look at my family stressing over something mundane, and I think, oh, they are so attached to their egos. Look how enlightened and detached I am.
Ah, the spiritual ego.
Exactly. I'm using the very tool of liberation to build a brand new, shinier cage of superiority. I've just swapped out my worldly ego for a spiritual ego. Isn't there an ancient analogy about a raft that deals with exactly this kind of spiritual materialism?
Yes, the raft simile. It is arguably the most famous metaphor in Buddhism for addressing this exact problem of fine dust. The Buddha frequently compared his own teachings, the Dharma, to a raft. Imagine you are standing on the bank of a raging, dangerous river.
Okay, I'm at the river.
This side of the river is samsara, the world of suffering, anxiety, and illusion. You need to get to the safe, peaceful shore on the other side, which represents liberation or nirvana. So what do? You gather branches, vines, and logs, and you build a raft.
Makes sense.
That raft represents the teachings, the meditation techniques, the chanting, the philosophy of emptiness, the sutras. You use the raft, you paddle furiously against the current, and you finally make it to the other shore. You are saved.
You've survived the crossing. So what do you do with the raft once you're on dry land?
Exactly. Do you look at this raft that saved your life, feel a deep sense of gratitude, and then hoist this heavy, waterlogged mass of wood onto your shoulders and carry it around the forest with you for the rest of your life? Of course not. That would be absurd. You would just be burdened by a new, heavy object. You leave the raft at the shore for the next person to use. It served its purpose.
The Diamond Sutra makes this radically explicit. It states, the Dharma must be relinquished, how much more so non-Dharma.
Meaning, the teachings are provisional tools, they are medicine for a specific disease. Once the disease of the ego is cured, you have to stop taking the medicine, or the medicine itself becomes a poison. If you cling to the concept of emptiness as if it were a rigid, absolute truth, that concept just becomes another brick wall blocking your freedom.
Which is why Master Senghao's structural model is so brilliant. Sengzao was a prodigy. He was the foremost student of the great translator Kumarajiva in the early 5th century, working in an enormous translation bureau with thousands of scholars.
He was the top guy. He was considered the absolute top mind in China for understanding emptiness. He mapped out the sutra perfectly to reflect this journey. Chapters 1 through 16 are about realizing the emptiness of the self leaving the worldly shore. Chapters 17 through 32 are about realizing the emptiness of the Dharma, the teachings themselves leaving the raft on the beach.
It is a devastatingly thorough philosophy. It systematically dismantles the self, and then it turns around and systematically dismantles its own teachings. It leaves you with absolutely nothing to cling to. No dogma, no rigid identity, no safety blankets.
It strips you bare.
And in that terrifying, exhilarating space of not clinging to anything, true freedom arises. That is the ultimate meaning of non-abiding.
It's a complete psychological unmooring, but in the most liberating way possible. It's a warning against religious dogmatism, fundamentalism, and spiritual materialism.
It is mind-blowing, but I also recognize that it is potentially dizzying for someone just trying to get through their Tuesday.
Yeah, we got pretty lofty there.
We've gone from washing feet to deconstructing the very fabric of reality and abandoning all conceptual frameworks. We urgently need to ground this back down to earth for you, the listener. Let's move into our final application. The listener understands that they need to let go of the ego, the rough dust, and let go of their rigid coping mechanisms, the fine dust. But they are still commuting to a stressful job. They are still dealing with inflation. They are still navigating complicated, messy human relationships.
Real life still happens.
Right. So how do we actually apply this ultimate wisdom of detaching from forms, what the Chinese text calls li shang, as a daily antidote.
To apply it, we have to recognize how we create our own suffering on a micro level every single day. According to the Diamond Sutra, our daily suffering comes from forcibly trying to fit our fluid, ever-changing, empty reality into rigid conceptual boxes.
Conceptual boxes. Give me an example.
We create these fixed forms or ideals in our minds, and then we mentally torture ourselves when messy reality refuses to conform to those boxes.
So wait, if I'm understanding this attachment to forms correctly, is that like when I obsess over, say, my podcast hitting a specific number of downloads, I create a rigid form in my mind that says a successful podcast has X thousand downloads, and if an episode falls short of that arbitrary number, I feel like a massive failure, even if the content was great. I'm suffering because reality didn't match the form I clung to.
That is a perfect example of Li Sheng. You attached your sense of self-worth to a numerical form. Think about how pervasive this is for everyone. Think about career ambitions. People create a rigid framework. I must be a vice president by the time I'm 35, making exactly this much money, or I am a failure.
Or think about appearance anxiety, which is just rampant today. My body must look exactly like this filtered, manipulated image on social media, or I am unlovable.
Yes, or relationship stress. My partner must express their love for me in this specific cinematic way, or the relationship is doomed. These are all attachments to forms.
And because reality is fluid, because of dependent origination, those forms are impossible to hold on to permanently. You might not get the promotion because the macro economy shifts.
Yeah.
Your body will inevitably age and change. Your partner will have a bad day and be grumpy. When reality shifts, you suffer immensely because your mind was abiding in that rigid idea.
Exactly. So the Diamond Sutra's antidote detaching from forms means recognizing that these frameworks are just rough dust. They aren't fundamentally real. They are societal constructs or projections of your ego.
I can hear the objection, though. If I detach from my career goals and I detach from my relationship ideals, don't I just become a nihilistic couch potato? If I practice non-abiding, does that mean I stop caring about my job, stop striving for excellence, and stop caring for my family?
That is the absolute most common and most dangerous misunderstanding of emptiness. And this is exactly where Thich Nhat Hanh's practical wisdom shines. Detaching from forms does not mean you stop participating in life. It means you participate fully, but without the toxic, suffocating grasping.
Without strangling the thing you love.
Right. Thich Nhat Hanh tells a beautiful story drawn from an ancient sutra to illustrate this. It's about a pair of street acrobats.
Oh, the acrobat story. I love this one. Walk us through it.
There is a master acrobat and his young student, a little girl named Maida. They travel from town to town, performing a highly dangerous balancing act to earn their living. The master balances a tall, heavy bamboo pole on his head, and the little girl climbs all the way to the top of the pole and balances there.
Sounds terrifying.
It is. One day before a performance, the master says to the girl, "Maida, we must be very careful today. You watch out for me, and I will watch out for you. That way, we will maintain our balance, avoid falling, and earn enough to eat."
Which sounds like standard logical advice. I'll look out for you, you look out for me. Teamwork.
Right. But the little girl, who possesses deep wisdom, replies, "No, master, that is not how we stay safe. You must take care of yourself, and I must take care of myself. If you maintain your own perfect balance, and I maintain my own perfect balance, then the whole act will be safe, we won't fall, and we will earn our keep." And later, the Buddha confirms that the little girl was absolutely correct.
That is such a profound shift in perspective. Because if the guy at the bottom is constantly looking up, worried about the girl, he's going to lose his footing and drop the pole. If the girl is constantly looking down, trying to manage his balance, she's going to fall. They have to focus on their own center of gravity.
Exactly.
How does that translate to our modern reality? Say, a highly toxic workplace where everyone is throwing each other under the bus.
It translates perfectly. In a toxic office, you cannot control the office politics. You cannot control your unreasonable boss or the gossip or the macroeconomic trends threatening your industry. Those are the chaotic, swirling forms of your environment.
They're out of your control.
Right. If your mind abides in those forms, if you constantly fixate on how unfair it is, or try to micromanage your coworkers' perceptions of you, you lose your balance. You are the acrobat looking down at the master's feet. You will fall into anxiety and burnout.
But if you practice non-abiding,
If you practice non-abiding, you apply Shan Hu Nian. You take good care of your own thoughts. You focus entirely on your own integrity, your own breath, your own immediate task. You maintain your center of gravity. You write the email to the best of your ability. You speak truthfully in the meeting. You do your job impeccably.
You focus on your end of the pole.
Exactly. Ironically, by detaching from the outcome, by letting go of the need for everyone to praise you or for the environment to be perfect, you naturally interact with the toxic environment in a calmer, far more effective way. By maintaining your own balance, you actually bring stability to the whole situation.
You wash the dishes to wash the dishes, not to get a trophy for dishwashing. You write the report to write the best report possible, not to guarantee a promotion. You love your spouse fully in this moment without demanding they fulfill a rigid checklist of behaviors in return.
Yes. When you act without a rigid attachment to the outcome, you are freed from the paralyzing fear of failure. Your mind is no longer scattered into the future or agonizing over the past. It is fully, vibrantly present.
That is the true, lived meaning of the famous line from the Diamond Sutra that famously awakened the sixth patriarch of Zen, Weneng, right?
Yeah.
Let the mind arise without abiding anywhere.
Yes.
Let the mind arise without abiding anywhere. You generate the intention to help, to work, to create, to love. The mind arises. But you do not anchor that intention to your ego or to rigid expectations of how reality must reward you. You flow through the action without getting stuck to it.
It is a state of dynamic, engaged freedom. You are deeply involved in the world, but you remain internally untouched by its turbulence.
What an incredible journey today. Let's trace the arc of what we've unpacked for everyone. We started by observing the mundane miracle of Chapter 1. We watched the Buddha quietly, mindfully put on his robes and wash the dirt from his feet, proving that the highest wisdom isn't found in cosmic light shows, but in the absolute presence we bring to our most ordinary moments.
And we saw how that silent demonstration prompted Subhuti to ask the great question in Chapter 2, giving voice to our own modern, universal exhaustion. How do we calm this chaotic, wild stallion of a mind, and where should we anchor it?
Which led us to the Buddha's secret weapon,善護念, the practice of affectionate attention, gently, skillfully guiding the hyperactive puppy of our mind back to the present moment without violence or harsh suppression.
And we explored the paradox of non-doing, learning from Zhuangzi that fighting our anxiety only creates a second illness.
And we saw how modern inquiry methods like Byron Katie's 4 questions help us mechanically deconstruct the emptiness of our terrifying stories.
We then navigated the mystery of the 2 questions, distinguishing between the rough dust of our worldly egos and the fine dust of spiritual attachment. We learned from Master Sengzhao's structural genius and the raft simile that true liberation requires us to eventually abandon the teachings themselves, lest we become trapped by our own spiritual materialism.
And finally, we brought it back to the office and the living room. We learned from Thich Nhat Hanh's acrobats that applying this wisdom means letting go of rigid forms and maintaining our own internal balance amidst the chaos.
The ultimate takeaway here is that the Diamond Sutra is not a manual for escaping your reality or deadening your emotions. It is a masterclass in engaging with your life, your stressful job, your complex family dynamics, your daily chores with a mind that flows like water around obstacles rather than a mind that crashes like a rigid stone against them. It is about acting with total compassion and fierce focus while remaining internally unshakably free.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today as you go about your business, something that circles right back to the very first scene we discussed. If the Buddha demonstrated the absolute highest state of enlightenment simply by the mindful, unhurried, perfectly present way he put on his robes, walked into town, ate his food, and washed his feet. Consider your own daily routine.
Think about the things you hate doing.
Exactly. What is one completely mundane, boring, maybe even highly annoying task you have to do today? Maybe it's folding a giant, never-ending pile of laundry. Maybe it's answering a tedious spreadsheet email from a client. Maybe it's just washing your coffee mug in the break room. It's a task you usually rush through, resenting every second of it, just so you can get to the important stuff.
The thing's in the way.
Right. What would happen if, just for today, you treated that exact boring task as the ultimate stage for your own supreme awakening? What if you applied Shan Hu Nian to the laundry?
It might just change your entire relationship with being alive.
It really might. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep exploring the nature of your own mind, and keep your thoughts well guarded until our next exploration.